What's up guys, my name is Liam and today, upon request, we're going to be doing a video of the Pulsar X2 versus the Pulsar X2 Mini. Which one of these shapes is going to be the best option for you? Let's check it out. Alright guys, so here we got the Pulsar X2, the medium size. This is the Bruce Lee edition, and then we just have the standard black edition and the Mini. I'm going to kind of go over the differences. One of the biggest requests that I get from people is wanting me to compare the shape sizes between these two. Okay, so when it comes to the build quality of this, on both my mice, the clicks feel really good. I get very minimal pre-travel, and you do kind of get a lot of post-travel on these mice. So once the button actually actuates, there's kind of a bit of post-travel there. The scroll wheel on both my copies, very defined steps. They feel great. The middle scroll button is actually very easy to actuate. Feels nice and clicky and great. Easy to spam. No issues with that there. The side buttons also feel really good on this. The rear side button does have a little bit less pre-travel than the front side button. So that's just one thing I noticed, but aside from that, the side clicks feel great. Aside from the little bit of the pre-travel on the front side button here, the only thing that I kind of noticed about these buttons is I do feel like they're kind of tiny. They're kind of skinny and narrow. I do kind of wish they were a little bit bigger, but aside from that, you know, not a major issue or anything like that. All right, when it comes to the weight of the X2 Mini, it's coming in at 53.4 grams. And when it comes to the weight of the Pulsar X2, I got it coming in at 59.2 grams. Overall, I feel like the weight and balancing of these mice feel phenomenal. It has almost perfect left to right balance, and the front to back balance feels really good as well. When it comes to the overall design of this mouse, I do kind of feel like the buttons kind of do have a little bit of an issue, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Depending on how you grip the mouse, right? Say if you like to do like an aggressive fingertip and you're far back on this mouse, there is a bit of an issue to where the buttons feel lighter towards the middle and front of the mouse, as opposed to the further you get back to the rear, the buttons start feeling heavier to actuate. So just something to keep in mind, you know, if you are a fingertip user. I actually tested out this mouse a lot over the weekend playing the Diablo 4 beta. And for those of you that have played that game, you know that you kind of have to click to point where you're going. And, you know, if you're going to micro back and forth or whatever when you're doing attacks, I was playing the wizard class. One thing that you do kind of notice, if your grip gets kind of further back on the mouse here, is when you start to notice it the most. I mean, you notice it everywhere, but there's quite a bit of rocking on the buttons there. And as you can see, they kind of teeter back and forth, left, right, left, right. And when it comes to the overall movement of the buttons in the front, you know, you can see there is a little bit of side play. And the side play isn't so much of an issue, but when you do add the rocking on there, you get kind of like this bowing effect. So if you're going to be clicking down and holding down the buttons a lot, and shifting around and rocking back and forth on the mouse, you definitely kind of feel it. It kind of feels like, you know, there's just some inconsistent wobbles in there and stuff like that. And I can definitely see how over time, this click implementation, you know, if these were to loosen up a bit more or something like that, how it could possibly impact the click quality of the mouse. But, you know, aside from that, you know, it's just one minor issue that I noticed there. And when I first got the mouse, it felt a little bit tighter. I didn't really notice it so much at first, but the longer I started playing with it, the longer the hours went on, as I started noticing it slightly a bit more. And then just to double check it here, you know, I pulled something up like one of the mice that I main for playing games like this is usually always the Atlantis Mini. But, you know, as you can see, there's no type of teetering on this mouse. Not like an absolute deal breaker or anything like that, but definitely something that I noticed there. But aside from that, the quality of these mice, it feels pretty great. Honestly, I love playing with these. The shape on these mice are phenomenal. You can see it still has the rocking here on the mini version, and honestly, it feels a little less on the mini version. Still a little bit of side-to-side button play. The pre-travel on the buttons on my version of the Mini, it does feel like it has a little bit greater pre-travel than on the Bruce Lee edition. The Bruce Lee feels like it has a little less pre-travel. But again, it's like nothing bad or insignificant. It's not like an issue to where it made it hard for me to spam the buttons or anything like that. When it comes to the original versions, they do use the KEL 8.0 switches in it. And I do want to say really quick that these optical switches on the Bruce Lee edition are honestly some of the best optical switches I've ever used. And to be completely honest with you guys, when I first took this mouse out of the box, I honestly was completely taken back and blown away by these optical switches. I really haven't been a fan of the implementation of most optical switches out there on the market. I do really like the ones on the Viper V2 Pro. I know they're not the most popular out there, but I do have to say that these switches are very light. I wouldn't say they're as great or feel as premium or give you the great tactical feedback as the Wano blue shell pink dots do. However, they are lighter. So they're lighter, easier to spam. And it was honestly is a joy using this mouse playing a game like Diablo, StarCraft, games like that are a lot of intensive, heavy clicking. With the implementation on this mouse and the Kill 8.0s, I wouldn't say that it's terrible, but they definitely do feel a bit heavier than the optical switches on the Bruce Lee edition. But yeah, so aside from having a bit more pre-travel than on the Bruce Lee edition, again, not like a major deal breaker or anything. The scroll wheel feels pretty similar. Has a nice defined steps. The middle mouse button click feels phenomenal, easy to spam. And then when it comes to the side buttons again, minimal pre-travel on the rear button and slightly a bit more pre-travel there on the front side. And then the one last thing I'll bring up about the differences between these two versions is the coating on it. The coating does feel a little bit grippier, but just when rubbing your fingers across the top surface there, this one definitely, the Bruce Lee definitely feels a little bit more grippy. Shapes are absolutely great on these. When you compare these mice to the other offerings on the market, if you compare them to any other mouse with a rear hump, this mouse by far has the flattest sides on it. So as you can see there, very flat. I have hailed the GPRO Superlight as having extremely flat sides. It does look like the rear on the X2 could slightly flare out a little bit more, but overall, you hardly feel a curvature in this mouse at all. You can slightly feel it towards the rear, but it's pretty much consistent throughout any type of grip that you have on this mouse. It just overall feels really flat. They both feel very flat on the sides, and they're pretty much even in width. They almost feel identical when it comes to the width of the mice. The top profile is completely different. In my opinion, this shape is a million times better than the GPRO Superlight. But personally, the overall feel of the mouse, they're very similar feeling. And then when it comes to the X2 Mini, the X2 Mini is more on par and more on the level of the Razer Viper Mini. The Pulsar X2 definitely feels much wider in hands, especially due to the fact that the Razer Viper Mini has these grooves on the side. Now, when it comes to the actual rear of the mice, they're about evenly as wide in the rear, but the difference is where the Viper Mini dips down and gets more narrow in the middle of the mouse. When it comes to the rear profiling on these mice, the Razer Viper Mini just overall feels a little more narrow. If you're to look at the top profile on the hump right here, it does taper off more aggressively and faster towards the sides. The X2 Mini, it tapers off kind of more slowly. It's going to feel wider on the sides towards the bottom middle. Again, it definitely makes the Mini feel like the more narrow choice. I feel like the hump on the Viper Mini, it just kind of feels like a smoother, more gradual hump. To where when you're holding it, it just kind of falls in your hands there. There's not necessarily any kind of aggressive feature towards the top of the mouse. And when you're comparing it to the X2 Mini, I definitely feel like the rear hump on the X2 Mini is more aggressive and more noticeable. So as you can see there, it's got kind of a pointy hump at the top there, and then it definitely just falls off in the back far more aggressively. So the feeling between these two when you're holding them in the hands, the top of the Razer Viper Mini just feels overall smoother. If you like to rest your hand on top of the mouse and do like a relaxed claw grip or anything like that, that you definitely notice that rear hump a bit more. Let's compare these to each other and see where they stand and which one's going to be the best option for you if you're not familiar with any of those options. There's not a whole lot of difference to the actual width. Obviously this one is a little bit wider, but since these mice are so flat, it doesn't feel a whole lot different. Just the overall width of the mice. That's about what you're looking at there. So just a little bit more of an overhang on the overall width of the mouse. So with that hump sitting higher and overall the top profile of this mouse feeling a bit wider, when you're to like relax claw these mice is where the biggest difference in these two mice stand out. I actually lean towards the original size X2 and the X2 medium. So the reason that I personally prefer the X2 medium over the X2 mini in this situation is because even though these mice appear to be a bit wider on paper, they don't necessarily feel so much wider. And let me explain this to you. So let me show you a comparison here and I'll break it down to the Atlantis mini. So when it comes to the bottom of these mice, if you're somebody that holds the mouse in the very middle like that, you do like more of a relaxed or even aggressive claw towards the front of the mouse, the mini can feel a bit more narrow than the X2 in this regards. Because again, since this does have the flatter sides, the most narrow point on the mini is towards the middle of the mouse. And it does slightly feel more narrow than the X2 when it comes to the very middle of the mouse. This mouse is more narrow on the bottom and it kind of gets wider as it goes to the top. It's kind of hard to show you there, but you can see how it's slanted like that. So it's more narrow on the bottom and it gets wider at the top. And on top of that, the flare on the bottom of the mouse makes this mouse feel overall much wider in the hand. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So again, if you're going to be gripping this mouse from the top and you're just going to go over the hump or ignore the hump, or even just place the hump in the palm of your hand, but you're up here gripping the mouse like this, then yeah, this could feel like a narrow mouse. Where it gets different is how I hold the mouse. When I grip the mouse, I actually hold the mouse like this. And as you can see there, I kind of place my thumb in this groove right here, and I use my pinky on the bottom here for some pinky relief. So I'm kind of holding the mouse like this. So if you're going to be playing with this mouse, holding it mostly from the back or the middle of the back, or just doing kind of just like a regular, just relaxed grip, just like this, that I feel like is personally a little bit more natural for me and my style, then that's where this mouse starts to feel like a much wider mouse. So if you look at the back of these here, you can just instantly see how much more narrow the X2 mini is in the back as opposed to the Atlantis mini in the back. It definitely feels much wider. And where it makes an even larger difference is if you're fingertipping this mouse and you fingertip it like this, yeah, it feels much wider. But if you were to do like a relaxed claw and you were to let the hump make contact with the top of your hand in any type of way, where it makes a huge difference is you can just look at the hump. At the top of the hump here, this tapers off more aggressively towards the sides, whereas the Lamzu Atlantis mini, look how much flatter that curve is. It tapers off less aggressively towards the sides. So as you could tell just by looking at the back of this mouse, depending on how you hold the mouse, the Lamzu Atlantis mini can feel much wider in the hands if you hold it more towards the rear, or you use the rear hump at all or anything like that. In the hands. And it feels so much wider that let's pull it up here against the X2. If we were to pull up and put it in the back and you were to look at it from this view, they don't look so different anymore. Now this has a much higher rear hump. If you take into consideration how aggressively this falls off as opposed to how flat this is, it makes the Lamzu Atlantis mini feel a bit wider. So that's my difference in comparisons between the X2 and the X2 Mini. Now I know I went off topic and I went off course there. I brought in the Lamzu Atlantis Mini and all these other things. But the reason I did that is because these are just purely questions that you guys have been giving me. I get asked these things all the time. So I wanted to go a little deeper in explanation in deciding which one of these mice is going to be the perfect option for you. Overall, the performance of this mouse is great. I love gaming with it. I don't want to get too technical on the details or specs of these mice. The one thing that I just recommend is when I'm gaming with these mice, I do like to turn motion sync off on them. These mice feel great and the shape on them is absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best shapes out there. All right, guys, I hope this video has helped you out and answered the questions you were looking for. If you have any additional questions or anything else I can help you with, please let me know down in the comments below. I did leave a link down in the comments below if you're interested in checking out these mice and you're looking to help support the channel. But aside from that, if you guys are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.